The current status of human rights and religious freedom in Vietnam, particularly thanks to our witnesses, many of whom have traveled long distances to be here. As you may know, last week we celebrated Vietnam Human Rights Day, calling on the government of Vietnam to cease its abuse of human rights and release political prisoners. Throughout 2011 and into this year, there has been a steady stream of politically motivated trials and arrests in Vietnam. Time and again, the Vietnamese government uses vague national security laws as a pretext to arrest and detain citizens who peacefully advocate for religious and political freedom. Independent writers, bloggers, and rights activists who question government policies, expose corruption, or call for democratic change are often met with harassment, arrest, and even torture. Government officials continue to harass religious groups, including Cao Dai Church, the Hao Ho Church, independent Protestant house churches, the Catholic Church, the Khmer Krom Buddhist temples, and the Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam. Religious institutions are required to apply for permits, but many of these applications are ignored or denied, leaving congregations without protection of the law and vulnerable to abuse. In January this year, I joined with Rep. Jim McGovern, co-chair of this commission, in issuing a statement calling for the immediate unconditional release of all Vietnamese prisoners of conscience. Just last month, on April 17th, the Vietnamese government arrested a U.S. citizen and democracy activist, Dr. Nguyen Qua Quan, upon arriving in Saigon, an American citizen. Several members of Congress have sent a letter to Secretary Clinton urging the State Department to secure his immediate release. Quite frankly, we have seen no progress at all. Hopefully we'll hear today that there is some progress. We're honored to have his wife with us today, and we join her in pressing for his quick release. I fear that when the United States granted Vietnam normal trade relations in 2001, we lost crucial leverage with which to pressure the Vietnamese government to improve its poor record on human rights. And the situation in Vietnam did not improve despite its ascension to the World Trade Organization in 2007, a move that many had hoped would bring political as well as economic liberalization. In 2006, the U.S. State Department removed Vietnam from the list of countries of particular concern, or CPCs, despite the Vietnamese government's continued repression of people of faith. I, along with a number of my colleagues in Congress, have consistently called on the State Department, both the previous administration, which didn't do a very good job either, and this administration has even done a worse job, and the administration to redesignate Vietnam as a country of particular concern. We're not alone in that recommendation. The bipartisan U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, in its recently released annual report, recommended once again that Vietnam be designated as a country of particular concern, given that, quote, the government of Vietnam continues to control all religious communities, restrict and penalize independent religious practices, severely and repress individuals and groups viewed as challenging its authorities. Any further cooperation between the U.S. and Vietnam should be contingent upon establishing benchmarks for improved human rights and increased religious freedom. I remain hopeful in my lifetime we will see the fall of the communist government in Vietnam. I think we're going to see the fall of the communist government in China. It's like they found Ceausescu's playbook and they're operating with it, and they didn't realize that he died at the end of the story. And I think the same thing is going to happen in China, in spite of the fact that this administration has not pushed China very, very hard. And the people of Vietnam will taste freedom after years of repression. Until that day comes, America must be and should be a voice for the voiceless. Our embassies should be islands of freedom. Quite frankly, if this were a Republican administration, I would call for the firing of our ambassador in Vietnam. I would say he should go. He has not treated this issue seriously. Rhetoric comes out periodically. He should kick the doors open of the American embassy, and he should do what George Shultz did during the 80s, George Shultz literally treated the American embassy in Moscow as an island of freedom. When George Shultz would go, or State Department would go, they would meet with the dissidents. They would invite them in. Many times George Shultz and Secretary Baker would actually go into the apartments of the dissidents if they were in jail to meet with their families. And this guy is out of touch. Now, he may be a wonderful person. Maybe he's a great father and a great grandfather and a wonderful person and volunteers in his neighborhood to help to clean up the community. But he's been a failure when it comes to human rights. And the very thought that American citizen, a Vietnam background, is in jail. So our embassy, let the word go forth, our embassy in Vietnam is not an island of freedom. Quite frankly, when he's fired, he should be fired, we ought to put a Vietnamese American in, somebody who has family members in Vietnam who understands these issues, emotionally understands them, and is committed to dealing with this. And I don't understand why we have never appointed a Vietnamese American to be an ambassador here. But again, I want to thank everyone for being here, and I look forward to hearing from